Indar.
I have permission to record, okay? Can you hear me?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. Good evening. How are you?
Good evening. Uh, let's say aku kabar baik. Kamu?
Aku juga kabar baik.
Very good.
Okay. Thank you so much for agreeing to this interview.
Of course, no problem. Yeah, it looks interesting.
And let me introduce myself. My name is Trapti Indar. You can call me Trapti. You can spell it.
Trapti. Yeah, no problem.
And could you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Miles. Miles Trapperby, if you need my full name.
Hello, Miles.
Yeah, hello. Nice to meet
Um,
you.
Yeah, today I would like to ask you some questions, and there are 8 points actually, but I only chose 3 topics, which is about uh, British royal family, British society in general, and also about culture and arts in the UK.
Yeah, wonderful.
Are you ready to this interview?
Yeah, all good to go.
Thank you. Let's begin. By the way, I divide to 3 sections in each moment. Um,
Okay.
we start to verse section, which is history of Britain. The first question: in your opinion, what role does the royal family play in modern British society?
Um, yes, I think it sort of has a dual role in that there's like the more public facing, like they're technically the head of state. So there still is an amount of government power that the monarchy has, not a huge amount, of course, but it still does have some executive power. But beyond that, it is really a historical thing, so traditional. So there's lots of tourism around it. The Buckingham Palace, Tower of London are big tourist bits in London.
Oh, that's interesting. Can we move to next question?
Yeah, of course. And tell me if I need to elaborate or yeah, anything like that.
Thank you. Second question: how do you feel about the monarchy today? Has public opinion changed in recent years?
Yeah, definitely. Public opinion has changed, but most people have quite a passive view towards the monarchy. So in opinion polls, very few people feel strongly for or against. In a recent poll I saw, only around 15% of people are strongly pro-monarchy. The majority of people, to be honest, don't care or have a strong opinion about it. It's almost like it's just a fact of life, it feels like. Personally, I'm very anti, because it is the most expensive head of state in Europe. And yeah, obviously there's no democratic process for their appointment. So, and that has been, how was that okay? So there was a little bit of lag there. Is that all good now? Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, so I guess the summary is it's trending more opposition towards the monarchy.
Oh, I see. Anything else?
No, no, that's fine.
Okay. So we can move to this question, right?
Yeah.
Could you share any historical events or milestone involving the royal family that you personally find interesting or important?
hmm Um, I think the biggest one within my lifetime is going to be when the Queen died, because that very much like she was the symbol of the monarchy, and was so historical for lots of people. She was on the money, and had like lived through the war. So she was a big, like, felt like a living piece of history. But when she died, and now we have the king, um, I think it demystified it for people, sort of, because it's now no longer like this person who was the monarch for such a long time and went through so much. It's just we have a new king who's still very old, but has none of that historical relevance. So definitely the death of the Queen would be the big significant historical change in my lifetime, of course. So, of
Thank you for explaining. That's
course.
that's a good point. Next question. What's your view about the younger generation of the royal family, such as Prince William or Prince Harry?
Mhm. Yeah, I think we're seeing sort of a development of what direction will the royal family take, and you're seeing some people, some of the younger generation who have less interest in having like being publicly royals. Of course, yeah, with Meghan and Harry moving to America. Um, I think though it still is, even these younger generations, people in this country know William and Harry, of course, but that the royal family is so extensive and there are multiple generations, and the amount that people aren't aware comes out of like public spending. So all of the private security for the royal family comes from like our taxes, essentially. Uh,
So,
I'll say a bit of lag again. I'll give it a second.
oh yeah,
Let me know when I should continue.
I'm sorry.
Fine to continue, yeah. No, that's fine. That's fine. Where should I go from? Sorry.
Yeah, but I didn't realize that before. And could you please tell me a bit more about it?
Which aspect? Sorry.
Okay. Next move, yeah. Next question.
No problem. But yeah, if you need me to explain a bit more on anything, just let me know. That's perfectly
Oh,
fine.
okay, thank you. Do you think the royal family still influence British identity and cultural heritage?
Yeah, definitely. I think domestically and internationally, I think it's hard to not associate Britain with the royal family, just in that so much of our iconography is just symbols of the royal family. It's always a crown, that sort of thing. But also it influences our culture as well. I don't know how much you know about the government structure, but like with the House of Lords, we wouldn't have a House of Lords if it wasn't for also having a monarchy, and how that influences like the class society is significant as well. Yeah.
Anything? Anything
Yeah,
else?
yeah. No, no, that's fine.
Okay. Um, sixth question. How does the royal family contribute to charity and social causes in the UK?
Mhm. Um, so they do have quite a few like royal family branded charity projects. I would say that Harry has shown that you can still have that same sort of influence without being part of the royal family, as in it more comes from the wealth than necessarily the fame associated with being a royal. And also there have been studies showing that once a charity does associate with the royal brand, it doesn't actually necessarily imply that they will receive better funding. And also I think potentially there's a bit of like greenwashing by the royal family as well, of like how much they utilize private jets and that sort of thing. But then they give an amount to climate activists like groups. So it's a bit of it's complicated at best. Yeah, that's all.
And that's very informative. Thank you.
No problem.
And the next question, from your perspective, Are there any controversies surrounding the monarchy in the impact British society?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think like a significant one was Meghan and Harry choosing to leave the royal family essentially, and that the fallout of that of Harry writing his book, there being like the um, racism accusations, like the royal family essentially have like opted out of an equality law. So the staff they hire, um, they essentially have a bias towards hiring white staff, which would be illegal in any other workplace, but it's legal for them. And Prince Andrew is the other very famous example, because he was friends with Jeffrey Epstein, so there's pedophilia and sexual assault allegations against him. And essentially, what happened was he just got taken off of like public activities, but he still plays a role. He's still in the royal family, obviously, and he still receives a huge amount of money. So yeah, the scandals, especially in recent years, have impacted the public image of the royal family.
Okay, thank you. Oh, first section is clear. We move
Wonderful.
to the next section is society.
Yeah.
For the first question, how would you describe the everyday life of British people nowadays?
Yeah, that's hard to describe. You can only really do in comparison. Everyday life. I think yeah, I'm not really sure. Like, are we talking about the primary factors in it? You know, it's got just quite a broad question. Um, and I think it's changed significantly
Hmm,
in the past few decades. That's yeah, a fair assessment.
okay. See, I see. It's good.
Well, yeah, yeah.
Next question. In your experience, what are the main values or attitudes that define British society?
Um, I think especially at the moment we're at quite a bit where there's quite contradictory factors, because you do have the historical elements like the royal family, like the House of Lords, like just the memories of what the country used to be, and now what it's developing into. Like I think most people would like to say that important values are the like equality, diversity, democracy. However, we have to assess that really there's lots of flaws in the current system. Um, so we need to like move on from the purely historical elements. So it's again complicated, but yeah, a developing process.
Yes. All right. Thank you. The next question. How do you see the relationship between different generation in the UK? For example, the attitude of young people compared to older generation.
Yeah, I think that yeah does follow on from what we were just saying of how there is an older layer that remembers something that is almost a fantasy, like their nostalgia for an older Britain that was perceived as better, when sorry, just my dog in the background. Yeah, then a nostalgia for an older Britain, and then the newer generations. 2 seconds. What do you need? Shouldn't want anything. Um, sorry. Yeah, so I think that there's definitely quite a generational divide, especially on certain social issues. I'd say the hot topics are immigration, LGBTQ rights, and also the climate, but even like Euroscepticism as well. So the relationship with the EU, because the Brexit referendum was in 2016, and that was a huge impact on our country. So there's lots of people that have grown up since then, who feel like they're affected by a vote that they never had a say in, pretty much. And also for many people, like if you're turning 18 now, the that you've only ever seen conservative governments, and you've only seen a Labour government, not like it only seen post-Corbyn Labour essentially. Um, so yeah, there's a big generational divide definitely on lots of those social issues.
Oh, yeah, see. Indonesia. So, my next question is wait. What are some common leisure activities that British people enjoy in their free time?
Yeah. Um, I'd say for activities like sports, it would most often be probably football, but then also things like badminton are popular as well. Um, for more casual things, it'll be either the cinema. We have cafe culture, but not as good as lots of the rest of Europe, not
Oh,
comparable
yeah.
to France or Italy.
Yes.
Um, and then pubs are very common as well. Of after work pints is quite a default thing, I'd say.
Okay, thank you. The next question. How important is community and local neighborhood life in Britain today?
Mhm. That's definitely one that's changed within recent history, in as much as there used to be a lot more community networks, I think, where now it's very common to, well, less people go to church, less people go to community activities overall. So it's much more likely that people don't know their neighbors or don't interact with them. So I'd say unless you're in select areas, it isn't a very significant thing anymore, really.
Yeah. And do you think British society has become more diverse and multicultural? If so, how does that affect daily life?
Yeah, so I'm from Leicester, which I don't know if you've ever heard of
Oh,
Leicester,
yeah.
but it's one of the most diverse cities in the UK. Leicester and Birmingham are both cities that with very recently, in recent censuses, they're less than 50% white. So Leicester is a very diverse city and has become more diverse. It's one of the cities in the UK with the biggest Muslim population, the biggest Indian population as well. Um, so in terms of how that's affected society, it changes the economy because, of course, like a Muslim population, you're not drinking, you're not smoking, it's different.
Okay.
Uh, in in Leicester, it's very easy to get halal foods as well. There's an area called the Golden Mile, and that's just Indian-owned restaurants. So that's all different curry houses and like food from different areas of India. Um, and as you probably know, like immigrant population sort of enclave of you have
Mhm.
specific areas of the city where those groups gather. So you now will find like even on the outskirts of Leicester where I live, there's like a Bangladeshi cultural centre. So it's yeah, definitely changed the makeup and the economy locally.
I got it. Thank you. Thanks for explaining. And last question in section two. What do you think are the biggest social challenges facing the UK now?
Um, Top ones, the main thing in discussion is immigration, definitely, of how that's affecting society. Again, I don't know how much you read of like news here or anything, but yeah, immigration is definitely the top issue that's being discussed by the political parties. other than that, it is the overall economic, like relative economic decline of Britain. Like we had neoliberalism where under Margaret Thatcher, where we shut down most of our domestic manufacturing to export it to other countries. And we're now having to live with the consequence of that 40 odd years on, where we have very little domestic manufacture. We aren't a Most of the profit from this country now comes from finance capital. So London investing in cheaper labour abroad, which means there isn't such a good job market here, really. The service industry is huge, hospitality is huge, but people are finishing university and finding it hard to get entry-level jobs. Um, so yeah, there's a range of issues that are all connected to each other, I think, is the thing.
Great, thank you. Oh, next to last section,
Yeah.
which is culture and arts. First question, what types of cultural activities do you enjoy personally, such as music, theater, festivals, or something like that?
Mhm. Um, yeah, I've gone to some music festivals. Um, the Fringe Festival is an event in Edinburgh, so the other side. It's very far away, but it's quite famous as a like a independent theatre that like lots of different small theatre projects, that sort of thing. Yeah, so a combination, I guess.
Okay, interesting. Next question, how would you describe the importance of the arts in British society?
I think there was a bit of a turning point where the Minister for Arts, that role got condensed into, I forget the exact term, but it was like the Minister for Arts and Arts, Sports and Hospitality or something along those lines. So the role from government investment has definitely diminished, and funding for the arts at the university and college level has decreased. And you do see the consequence of that, of essentially a lot of the music, film that we see is American. Like a huge amount of it is,
Yeah,
and that you see that where even like young people here, they pick up American terms because the amount of American media there is. So that's the effect that that's had.
really?
Is that surprising?
Yes. Anything else?
No, no.
Okay. And next to, are there any particular cultural events or festivals in your city or region that you recommend?
Um, I think because of the big immigrant populations in Leicester, the biggest events really are related to that diaspora. So Diwali here is huge, like the Hindu festival is really big. There's big celebrations for Eid as well. I think if we're talking just about like British ones,
Oh,
it's hard to describe what native British is. But the like Christmas
hmm?
markets, so over around Christmas, usually for all of December, um, shops are open later. You have temporary stalls, you have like big nighttime street markets, that sort of thing. So that's very nice.
Thank you. Um, in your opinion, how has British culture influenced the world, for example, through literature, music, or film?
I think in terms of sort of cultural impact, purely because of the British legacy of the size of the British Empire. It has left a mark around the world, and arguably a
Hmm.
lot of American culture is British also, or has come from a British root, really. So the impact has been huge and in terms of like popular culture even, you have big media franchises that are global. But I think if we're talking about music, probably less so really
Mm,
compared to many other cultures.
yeah.
It's not our peak. But in terms of literature, purely because of how well known English is, like English being a world language, it means lots of famous English language literature has a much wider audience than even works that are comparably good, but in a less spoken language or a more regional language.
Okay. Thank you. Do you think young people in the UK are still interested in traditional British arts and heritage?
Yeah, I'd say yes to a degree. Of there's definitely points that are have a cultural legacy that are always going to be recurring of you're never going to go multiple years without
Mm.
new media covering significant points like World War One. That's always going to be something that there will be new films about, new TV shows about, that sort of thing. Um, and you are to a degree surrounded by that sort of legacy when you're just wandering around cities here. But again, I think that's one that's going to be lessened by the impact from American culture because, yeah, young people are consuming more American media overall. Um, and also, as our country becomes more diverse, you reassess that heritage as well, because there's elements that you need to think, oh, is that something we actually want to be celebrating? Is it something to actually be proud of? And how do we reanalyze those legacies?
And could you mention any famous British artists, musicians, or writers that you admire?
Sure, yeah. I think in terms of authors, my favorite British author's probably George Orwell. Classic, of course. Also, James Connolly is excellent as well. It's arguable if he's British because he's Irish, and that's a whole separate thing. But at the time, he was British. In terms of actors, probably any of the actors that make it into Marvel who are British. That's always a high point for British arts at the moment, really. Um, and what's the other one? Musicians. I'd say the Libertines, like new British punk, is very good. Like very much continuing the heritage of the 80s. Kneecap, again, they're technically Irish, because Irish have excellent culture. But I think that's a good example of they're using the Irish culture to express solidarity with Palestine. So it's a whole nother thing. But it's yeah, it's about what is the modern British identity, I suppose.
And last question. How has technology, such as social media, impact the way people experience art and culture in Britain?
Yeah, definitely. Like you're going to have the impact of things like TikTok, where it's just the way you experience film or yeah, media overall has changed a lot. The pace has changed. The way you access content has changed because of the algorithm. And maybe that has again made it easier for American culture to affect British culture. But I think it's also changed the relationship that first generation immigrants have as well. Because the first time you come to this country, it used to be that
Mm.
people could feel quite isolated, but now it's so much easier. And I say this entirely as a positive thing, but it's much easier to still maintain those links to the country they were originally from. I was talking to someone recently who they were Bangladeshi, and the amount of media that you can now have access to is so much more diverse. When you look at something like Netflix, I know that's not social media, but when you look at something like Netflix, it has a really good range of world film now, where it used to be almost entirely American and British that we had access to. There's now lots in Hindi language, Tamil, there's Thai, Filipino, Indonesian films. So there's, yeah, a really wide range that people are engaging with. And Korea, of course, sorry. Korea's a huge one for media content.
Okay. Oh, this interview is finished.
No problem.
Thanks for
Hopefully I could help.
explaining. Thanks for explaining. Thank you very much for your
No
time
problem.
and for sharing your insight about British society, the royal family, and culture. Your answer will be really helpful for my final project, final test.
Wonderful. I'm
Yes.
very glad to hear that. Wonderful.
I'm sorry if I made a mistakes. Disturb you on your time.
Not at all, not at all. No problem. Perfectly fine.
Thank you. Have a great day, Miles.
You too. Thank you very much.
Have a nice- Um, okay.
Yeah, wonderful.
Wait.
No problem.
I'll turn it off. Okay.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you, Miles. Have a great day.
No worries. You too.